The stalemate continues. We're in the fifth day now of the government shutdown, forced by the failure of House Republicans and the Democratic-led Senate to agree on a plan to fund the government. How did we get here? It's a very simple question. Jared Bernstein, an MSNBC contributor, also former economic policy advisor to Vice President Joe Biden, and NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. A big deal for both of these men to be working on a Saturday, but we wanted to bring them here to talk about what a lot of folks are saying is the real true cause of this. Jared, you wrote about it this week. What you see as a root cause of the stalemate, quote, gerrymandering is clearly implicated. The fact of safe, non-competitive districts robs the political process of a disciplinary force where members could conceivably be held to task for shutdowns and defaults. Is that it? Is that why some Republicans are unwilling to deal?
It's one of the reasons why. There are numerous perpetrators here, but that's certainly an important one. Let me throw just a few numbers at you. Back when we had the last shutdown, 95, 96, by the way, I was working for the government then, 79 House districts came from 79 House members on the Republican side came from districts that Clinton had won. In this case, only 17 House Republicans came from districts that President Obama had won. If you look at the national election, Obama won by 4 percentage points on a national level. But if you look at the shutdown caucus, the caucus that's behind the current shutdown among the House Republicans, Romney beat Obama by an average of 23 percentage points. So these are very isolated districts. If you look at the demographics within those districts, they're trending very different from the rest of America. And in that sense, they are safe, non-competitive districts, and that means that they're not under the sway of the leadership. Again, if you think about the 80 or so Republicans that are members of this kind of shutdown caucus behind what we're going through right now, they represent only a third of the Republican caucus and less than 20% of the House of Representatives.
Mark, we know that we are more polarized than we've ever been. But what I find most interesting is that we created the polarization.
Oh, well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, and you talk about everyone seems to be in their red corners or blue corners, and you are right about that, Craig. Gerrymandering is one role in that. I'd also mention that self-sorting is another, that if you are a Democrat, you're more likely to live in an area that is full with a lot of Democrats. If you're a Republican, you're probably going to be in a rural area with a lot of other Republicans. And then, of course, it has to do with the fact that the parties are more homogenous than ever. 30 years ago, you saw a lot of conservative Southern Democrats. Those could be potential swing votes in a battle just like this. And you also ended up having a lot of liberal or moderate Republicans, particularly in the Northeast. Those folks are more and more extinct right now in politics. And so when you add up all these things together, you're looking at the self-sorting, you look at the redistricting and the gerrymandering, you look at all these things, and it goes to what Jared was just citing right now. There are fewer and fewer potential crossover votes to be able to resolve these type of political stalemates.
Jon Stewart's Daily Show put the finger on gerrymandering this week as well. Take a look, take a listen.
It's actually Louisiana's 6th congressional district. Obviously, it makes no physical sense, but when it was redrawn in 2010, its white majority increased from 60 to 74%, taking it from Republican to turbo-Republican.
Republican. Jared, first of all, for folks who may not understand how this comes to be, how are districts, how are congressional districts, how are they drawn? Who draws them? What's the process?
Every 10 years, and this is in the Constitution, there is a census of the nation, and districts are supposed to be redrawn based on the population shift that occurred over that decade as recorded by the decennial census. The redrawing, and this is critical now, the redrawing is done by state legislatures. So in 2010, many state legislators became much more red, and in some cases much more blue. Yeah. So they took that constitutional rule, and by the way, you just look at a picture like the one you just saw, and I would argue that they abused it in such a way as to gerrymander the districts.
I want to bring in Tennessee Democratic Congressman Steve Cohen because he's actually got a plan to undo some of this. Congressman, in the simplest of terms, how would the bill that you presented, how would it limit gerrymandering?
It would take redistricting out of the political process and require it to be done by independent, nonpartisan, non-political groups in each state, looking at compactness of districts and contiguous districts, so they'd be geographically close and they would be compact. And that would be the only things they'd look at, and not look at the politics or the incumbency as an issue.
What's been the response to your proposal?
Well, it hasn't been the most popular thing since, French toast. But
Nicely said.
Well, Mark, and here's the thing, and Congressman, I'm glad, I want to come back to you in just a second. How reasonable is it, Mark Murray, to expect, Democrats and Republicans, mind you, how reasonable is it to expect safe lawmakers to change a system that benefits them?
And I think, Craig, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's one of the big reasons why it's very hard to have change. Now, the kind of change that the congressman has just proposed is something that the state of California has adopted. So it is possible. But you talk about this, it comes down to pure political power. And one of the reasons why Democrats ended up holding the House of Representatives for 30, 40, 50 years, even when there were Republicans in the White House like Ronald Reagan, was because they had controlled the powers of redistricting. They had be able to hold the state legislatures, governorships, just at the right time when that decennial process was being played out. And then Republicans in 2010 ended up striking gold, that they had such big wins in state capitals across the country. It really benefited them. And then it becomes incumbent. That's so why 2020, the next time, and it's linked with the presidential contest, will be a big fight and the chance for Democrats to really try to make gains and change the system and change congressional districts more in their favor. It just comes down to pure political and partisan politics.
Congressman, you were on the floor of the House a few hours ago calling on Republicans to unite for the sake of the country. For our viewers at home, this is what you said.
There's apparently a wall between the Tea Party Republicans and the mainstream Republicans who would like to move this country forward. Mr. Speaker, tear down that wall.
You're there in D.C. on the Hill. Congressman, any indications at 3:30 on the East on a Saturday afternoon that that wall is coming down anytime soon?
not really. And that Republican president, I paraphrase, President Reagan also said that playing politics with the debt ceiling was anathema and irresponsible and reckless. I'm afraid President Reagan wouldn't be allowed to be a member of the majority in this caucus.
Congressman Cohen, thank you so much for stopping by on a Saturday. MSNBC contributor Jared Bernstein, NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. A big thanks to all of you. Thank you so much for breaking down some of that for us. Up next.